Hello and welcome. If you're listening, chances are you're a C1 English learner. You've put in the work, you understand complex ideas, you can follow films, lectures. It's seriously impressive. But maybe, just maybe, there's that little voice asking, okay, is this peak fluency? Is this as good as it gets? You know that feeling where understanding is pretty smooth, but actually saying what you mean exactly how you mean it still takes that extra bit of effort sometimes. Maybe you're searching for the perfect idiom, or you catch yourself translating in your head, and the sentence comes out okay, grammatically fine, but just lacking something. That spark. That's the gap we're talking about between being really proficient and having that deep, almost unconscious fluency where the language just flows. Now, for ages, the story was a bit, well, disheartening. This idea of a critical period for learning language. The suggestion was basically after childhood, your brain wasn't quite up to the task of reaching that truly native-like level. You missed the boat, sort of. Well, the good news is that idea is largely history. Modern neuroscience has shown us something incredible. Our brains, they aren't fixed. They're constantly changing, adapting, rewiring. This amazing ability is called neuroplasticity. And that is the real key, we think, to unlocking those final doors to the fluency you're aiming for. So this deep dive, it's not about drilling more vocabulary lists. You're likely past that. It's about understanding how your own mind works so you can become, well, the architect of your own fluency. We're going to unpack the science, look at real practical strategies, and hear about people doing this: a Japanese executive, a Brazilian marketer, a Swedish manager, an Egyptian engineer, all using these ideas, ready to push past that C1 plateau. Let's get into building your eloquent brain. Okay, so let's start there. Neuroplasticity. It sounds technical, but what are we actually talking about?
It sounds fancy, doesn't it? But the concept itself is surprisingly intuitive. Think about walking across a field covered in fresh snow. The very first time, you leave just a faint track. It takes some effort, right? Pushing through.
Sure, yeah.
But if you walk that exact same path every single day, what happens?
The snow gets packed down, you make a clear path, it gets easier.
Exactly. It becomes defined, effortless. And if you stop using it, new snow covers it up eventually. Your brain is actually quite similar. You've got something like 86 billion neurons, these nerve cells, forming this incredibly complex network. Every single thing you think or learn or do involves specific neurons firing off electrical signals along certain pathways. Neuroplasticity is just the brain's capacity to change and reorganize those pathways based on what you experience, what you learn, what you do. There's a kind of mantra in neuroscience, Hebbian theory, which boils down to neurons that fire together, wire together.
Okay, fire together, wire together. Makes sense.
Let's make it practical.
Yeah.
So you learn a new, maybe nuanced English phrase, like to be on the fence.
Undecided.
Right. The first time, you form a weak connection. Neurons linking the sound, the words, the meaning, just that first footprint in the snow. But then you hear it again, maybe, or crucially, you use it yourself in a conversation a few days later. You're firing that same pathway again.
Strengthening it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Each activation makes the connection stronger. Your brain basically says, this pathway seems important, and reinforces it.
Yeah.
It does this partly through something called myelination. Myelin is this fatty stuff that wraps around the neuron's axon like insulation on a wire.
Okay.
And it makes those electrical signals travel much, much faster and more efficiently. So true fluency, that feeling of effortless recall and production, it's really about having this vast network of super fast, heavily myelinated neural highways for English in your brain.
Wow, okay. That analogy really helps. And it explains so much. Like why cramming for a test never really works long term. We've all done it.
Oh, absolutely. Cramming forces those weak initial connections maybe overnight, enough to pass the test sometimes. But without repeated, spaced-out activation over time, those pathways they fade, like light snow. Your brain hasn't gotten the signal to invest in properly myelinating them.
Right. No long-term reinforcement.
Exactly. Real mastery comes from that consistent, deliberate engagement, building the path, not just stomping on the snow once.
Okay, so this brings us to something really important and frankly kind of damaging that a lot of learners grapple with. That old critical period myth. This idea that, after your teens or whatever, your brain just isn't plastic enough for true native-like fluency. It's held people back.
It's a really persistent myth, and it is discouraging. And look, yes, kids often seem to absorb languages like sponges. It looks effortless.
It really does.
But it's not some magic window that slams shut. It's more a combination of things. Their brains are incredibly plastic, then yes, they're usually in total immersion, 24/7. They tolerate ambiguity better, they're less afraid of mistakes, and their motivation is primal, connection, survival almost.
Yeah, so those are real factors.
They are. However, adult learners have some serious advantages that often get completely overlooked. These are your superpowers, really. First, metacognition. You can think about how you learn. You can spot your own weaknesses, choose strategies, track your progress. Kids learn instinctively. You can learn intentionally.
That's a huge difference.
It's huge. Second, you have existing cognitive frameworks. You already understand abstract ideas like grammar, tense, social cues from your first language. You're not starting from scratch. You're basically connecting new English concepts onto an existing mental map. It's like adding new countries to a world map you already know, rather than drawing the whole world from zero.
Okay, leveraging what's already there.
Exactly. And third, discipline and focus. As an adult, you can actually set aside dedicated time for focused, deliberate practice. Kids mostly learn through play and interaction. You can sit down and really work on something specific. So the key takeaway is this. The adult brain isn't less plastic. It's differently plastic. It takes more conscious effort, perhaps, but the potential for building a really rich, sophisticated language network is absolutely immense. The goal isn't to learn like a child. It's to learn effectively as an adult using the strengths your mature brain offers.
That shift in perspective is, well, it's everything, isn't it? It puts the power back in your hands.
Yeah.
So knowing all this, how do we actually do it? What are the practical tools, the strategies you can use to actively rewire your brain for that deeper fluency? Because I think many of us, especially at C1, fall into what you might call the passive consumption habit. Watching shows, listening to things, reading, which is great for understanding.
But it doesn't build the speaking or writing muscles nearly as much. It's like watching fitness videos instead of actually doing the workout. Your receptive skills get strong, but production lags.
Exactly. So how do we get active?
Okay, tip number 1, the summarize and re-explain technique. This is powerful. After you read an article or watch a news segment or listen to part of this deep dive, pause, turn it off. Then, out loud, explain the main points to an imaginary person, or even a real one. Don't just list facts. Try to synthesize it. Give a coherent summary in your own words.
So forcing recall and restructuring.
Precisely. And take it a step further. Explain why you agree or disagree with it, or how it connects to something else you know. This forces active recall, analysis, and critically, language production. You're building and strengthening those expressive pathways.
I like that. Okay, what else?
Tip 2, the active questioning method. When you are consuming content, listening, or reading, don't just let it flow past you. Actively engage. Pause it sometimes. Ask questions out loud. Okay, what's the actual evidence for this point? Are there any counter-arguments? How does this fit with what I learned last week?
Turning passive listening into a mental workout.
You got it. It forces deeper processing, creates more connections, makes the learning stickier. It's much more effective than just letting the words wash over you.
Makes sense. And we know our brains aren't really designed for cramming or binge learning, as you said. Consolidation takes time, doesn't it? Especially sleep.
Absolutely critical, which leads nicely into efficiency tools. Tip 3, master-spaced repetition systems, or SRS. You probably know flashcards. SRS is like smart flashcards on steroids. Apps like Anki, for example, use an algorithm. They show you a piece of information, maybe a tricky idiom, a specific collocation, a fine grammar point just before your brain is about to forget it.
Right, that optimal moment for recall.
Exactly, and each time you recall it successfully, the interval gets longer. It's incredibly efficient for locking things into long-term memory. And for you at C1, it's not for basic cat-dog words. It's perfect for those nuanced things. Idioms like bite the bullet, collocations like launch an initiative, subtle grammar like using the subjunctive correctly. It targets and reinforces those specific neural links.
Okay, SRS for the finer points. What's next?
Tip 4, embrace interleaving. The standard way to study is often blocked practice. 1 hour grammar, 1 hour vocab, right?
Yeah, seems logical.
But research shows mixing things up within a study session, interleaving, is actually better for long-term, flexible learning. So maybe you do 15 minutes on the pronunciation, then 15 minutes with your SRS idioms, then 15 minutes writing a paragraph using transition words, then back to some pronunciation work.
Why does that work better? It feels harder.
It is harder in the moment. That's called desirable difficulty, because you're forcing your brain to constantly switch gears to load and reload different mental models. This builds more flexible, adaptable connections. It mirrors real-world language use where you constantly switch between skills and topics. It's tougher short-term, but builds much more robust pathways long-term.
Desirable difficulty, I like that. It ties into the idea that growth happens outside our comfort zone, right? Neuroplasticity needs a challenge.
Exactly. Comfort doesn't trigger change. Challenge does. Which brings us to tip 5. Engage in deliberate practice. This isn't just practicing, it's very specific. It means identifying a precise weakness, focusing on it with intense concentration, setting a clear goal, and getting immediate feedback.
Okay, give me an example for language learning.
Sure. Let's say you know you overuse simple connecting words like and or but. Your deliberate practice session might be: record yourself speaking for 2 minutes on a specific topic. Then listen back, only focusing on your transition words. Count them. Identify where you could have used something more sophisticated like furthermore, consequently, nevertheless. Then re-record, consciously trying to integrate maybe 2 or 3 of those specific better words. That laser focus, that feedback loop, that's deliberate practice. It builds specific circuits very efficiently.
Highly targeted. Okay. What about mistakes? The fear of making mistakes is huge for many learners.
It's probably the biggest inhibitor to fluency. Tip 6 is fundamental. Reframe errors as data. From a neuroplasticity viewpoint, an error isn't failure. It's simply a signal from your brain saying, okay, this particular pathway isn't quite right yet, or it's weak. That's it.
It's diagnostic, not judgmental.
Exactly. It's incredibly valuable data. When someone corrects you, try to see it not as criticism, but as them handing you a free, personalized map to build a better neural pathway. So embrace the correction. Thank them. And then, crucially, try to use the corrected form yourself right away if possible. That action helps solidify the new correct pathway.
Changing that mindset around errors sounds key. Okay, what about immersion? We hear that word a lot. Does it just mean moving to London or New York?
Not at all. That helps, obviously, but immersion is much more about mindset and conscious choices you can make anywhere. So tip 7, curate your digital world. This is low-hanging fruit. Change the language settings on your phone, your computer, your social media apps to English.
Seems small, but I guess it adds up.
It forces hundreds of tiny English interactions every day. Also, actively follow news sources, writers, artists, even comedians from different English-speaking countries. Get exposed to authentic language, different accents, cultural nuances.
Create your own bubble.
Pretty much. And tip 8, maybe the ultimate immersion technique. Think in English. Start narrating your day to yourself, in your head, in English. Okay, I'm getting up now. Need to make coffee. Where are the beans?
That sounds hard at first.
It will feel slow and clunky initially. You'll search for words. That's normal. But stick with it. Because what you're doing is directly building and exercising the neural pathways for generating spontaneous thought in English. You're bypassing the translation step from your native language. Over time, that pathway gets stronger and faster until thinking in English starts to feel, well, automatic. That's a huge leap towards fluency.
That really gets to the core of it. Okay, we've covered a lot of mental techniques, but you mentioned neuroplasticity is biological too.
Absolutely. It's not just abstract mind stuff. It's happening in the physical tissue of your brain. So brain health matters a lot. Tip 9, prioritize sleep. Seriously. Sleep isn't just rest. It's when your brain does critical housekeeping and learning consolidation. During deep sleep, your brain replays patterns from the day, strengthening useful neural connections, transferring memories to long-term storage. Sacrificing sleep really hinders learning.
So that intensive study session needs good sleep afterwards to really stick.
Definitely. And tip 10, move your body. Regular aerobic exercise is fantastic for brain health. It boosts blood flow, which is obviously good, but it also increases levels of a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Fertilizer for the neurons, I've heard it called.
That's a great description. BDNF supports the health of existing neurons and encourages the growth of new ones. So a brisk walk, a jog, some kind of movement, it literally helps your brain be more plastic and ready to learn.
It's amazing how interconnected it all is. Mind, body, learning. Okay, so these principles sound great. How do we see them play out in real life with actual learners?
Yeah, let's look at some examples. Think of Kenji, a project manager in Tokyo. Brilliant technically, great grammar on paper, but he would just freeze up in spontaneous meetings. Fear of mistakes was paralyzing him.
Common problem.
Very. So Kenji used deliberate practice. He joined an online English debate club. His specific goal: use 3 new business idioms correctly each week. And he consciously reframed errors. Got corrected, he'd write it down, say it correctly 5 times right then. Over months, he literally built new neural pathways for confident, spontaneous speech while weakening those anxiety circuits.
Targeted effort again? Cool.
Then there's Sophia, a marketer in São Paulo, fluent speaker. But she wanted to refine her pronunciation, things like the sound, getting the intonation just right for presentations. She used intense shadowing. Mimicking native speaker recordings, not just the words, but the rhythm, the pitch changes, the music of the language. She recorded herself constantly, comparing, adjusting.
Like training muscle memory for her mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Carving those precise motor pathways in her brain for the sounds and flow of English.
Okay, who else?
Lena, an engineer in Stockholm. Huge passive vocabulary from reading technical papers, but struggled to use that vocabulary actively in discussions.
The knowing versus doing gap.
Right. She used the summarize and re-explain technique, but professionally. After reading a complex paper, she practiced briefing her team. Actually, this is her reflection in the mirror using the key terminology. She also built an SRS deck specifically for technical terms, but the prompt wasn't the definition. It was a work scenario where she had to produce the right term. This built rapid retrieval pathways for her active vocabulary.
Smart application. And
Omar, a software developer in Cairo, was 45 and battling that I'm too old to learn belief.
the myth again.
Yeah. He focused on consistency and efficiency using micro-learning, SRS flashcards during his commute, writing just one well-formed paragraph on a technical topic during his lunch break. Every day. Small, consistent efforts. He realized the adult brain's strength wasn't raw speed, but its ability to layer new information onto existing knowledge and experience. He steadily built his fluency, proving age wasn't the barrier, he thought.
Those stories are really powerful. They make it concrete.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the C1 plateau directly. That point where progress feels like it just stalls. It's frustrating.
It really is. And neuroplasticity helps explain why it happens. Think back to the highway analogy. Getting from A2 to B2, you were building the main interstate highways. The progress felt massive, fast. You learned core grammar, thousands of words.
Big leaps.
Right. At C1, those highways are mostly paved. Now, the work is different. It's about building the smaller connecting roads, the scenic routes. It's about adding sophisticated signposts, refining the landscape. The changes are more subtle, nuanced. They require different kinds of effort, different tools. They're just pouring more asphalt on the main highway.
So the old methods might not be challenging enough anymore.
Often, yes. You need new kinds of challenges to stimulate further neuroplastic change. So, strategy 1 for breaking the plateau. Niche down and go deep. Stop practicing general English quite so much. Pick a specific area you're genuinely interested in. Maybe it's astrophysics or Renaissance art or the economics of craft beer, whatever. And aim to become knowledgeable in that niche using English. Read academic papers, watch specialist documentaries, join online forums. This forces you to learn highly specific, sophisticated vocabulary and complex sentence structures related to that topic. You're building a dense, specialized neural network.
Okay, find a passion project within English. I like it.
Strategy 2. The Feynman technique, teach to learn. Richard Feynman, the physicist, said something like, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough.
That rings true.
Trying to teach a concept forces you to truly understand it, to synthesize it, to find clear language. It's the ultimate act of recall. It ruthlessly exposes your own gaps. So try explaining a complex English grammar point or a concept from your niche interest to someone else. Start a blog, make a short video, explain it to a language partner. The act of formulating the explanation builds incredibly strong, flexible pathways.
Solidify your own understanding by trying to explain it. Makes sense.
And strategy 3. Embrace creative constraints. Sometimes, limiting yourself forces creativity and pushes you beyond your usual comfortable phrases. Try writing a short story using only one-syllable words. Sounds weird, right? But it forces you to focus intensely on rhythm, syntax, strong verbs, not just fancy vocabulary.
Interesting challenge.
Or write a poem about something totally mundane like your stapler.
Oh.
It pushes you to use metaphor, simile, sensory details. For speaking, maybe join an improv group. Talk about pressure.
Whoa, improv. That's definitely a challenge.
It's fantastic for spontaneous speech, thinking on your feet, retrieving language instantly under pressure. The point is, these constraints force your brain to work differently, to build new connections beyond your well-worn paths.
So niche down, teach it, or constrain yourself creatively. Powerful ways to keep building. This whole journey, then, it's not really about reaching some mythical, finished state of fluency, is it?
Not at all. It's more like
Wow.
continuous construction, ongoing exploration and renovation within your own mind. And the core message, the really empowering thing about neuroplasticity, is that your effort makes a physical difference. Every time you push yourself to use that new phrase, every time you notice an error and correct it, every time you choose to think in English, you are literally acting as a neurosculptor. You're strengthening connections, pruning unused ones, laying down that myelin sheath to make the signals faster, more automatic, more intuitive. You're physically changing your brain.
So that gap, that feeling of not quite there yet for C1 learners, it's not an insurmountable wall.
No, it's just
Close.
space waiting to be filled with new, refined, more efficient neural pathways that you have the power to build.
Think about Kenji, Sophia, Lena, Omar. They aren't linguistic superheroes. They're just people who, consciously or not, leverage their brain's own ability to change. And you absolutely have that same ability. You are the architect. Your brain is the material. Eloquence is the design. Now, go and build.